Hello everyone. Welcome to another episode of horror stories that you can listen to while you fall asleep. Before the video begins, let us know what time is it and where you are listening from. Also, if you have suggestion for next horror story settings, let us know in the comments. Now let us begin. I still can't sleep when I hear diesel engines at night. Something about the low rumble gets under my skin, like it's vibrating a memory I'd rather forget. This happened in 2019. I was hauling freight from Reno to Salt Lake. Overnight runs, tight deadlines, same as always. It was supposed to be uneventful, just another lonely stretch across the Nevada desert. But the memory of that night has stuck with me like oil you can't scrub off. The drive had started out normal enough. Clear skies, long empty roads, and the occasional passing rig. It was around 1:30 a.m. when I stopped at a rest area just outside Ely. Remote place. One of those half-lit spots with a few vending machines and a single, flickering sodium light over the parking lot. There were two other rigs parked, engines off, cabs dark. I figured the drivers were asleep. I got out to stretch my legs and grab a soda. I remember the air being still. Not quiet, but still. That kind of silence that has weight to it. Even my footsteps sounded too loud on the pavement. That's when I saw it. Another truck, pulling slowly into the far corner of the lot. Big, older Peterbilt model, deep green paint, chrome grille shining under the parking light. Something about it felt off. It didn't park with the others. It just sat there, engine humming low, cab lights off. I didn't think much of it at first. Some guys like to idle and cool down before shutting off. But then I noticed it was facing me slightly angled. Not parked, not aligned like the others. Just sitting there, angled, like someone was watching me from inside. I got my drink, returned to my truck, and shut the door. Locked it out of habit. Still, I sat there for a few minutes, engine running, just watching that green truck. It didn't move. No one got out. I tried to shake it off. Pulled out of the rest stop, and got back on the highway. But maybe 5 minutes down the road, I saw headlights in my mirrors. Two distinct high beams far back, but gaining. At first, I figured it was just another night driver pushing speed. But the lights stayed on me. Close, then dropping back, then close again. Always just out of clear view, but close enough that I could feel someone was watching. I sped up. So did they. For the next hour, that green truck stayed behind me. No passing attempt. No exit. Just tailing me back and forth like it was playing a game. At one point, I pulled into a truck stop, hoping they'd pass. I waited. 5 minutes. 10. Nothing. So I pulled back onto the road. Less than 2 minutes later, headlights again. Same distance. Same pattern. That's when I started to panic. I radioed out on channel 19. Asked if anyone else was seeing this truck. Silence. I tried again. Static. Maybe no one was close enough to pick it up. Maybe they were sleeping. I passed another rest area and debated stopping, but something told me not to. My gut said if I pulled over, I wouldn't be getting back on the road. Instead, I kept driving. My hands were shaking on the wheel, and I could feel my shirt sticking to my back with sweat. The speed limit was 70. I was doing 85. That truck? Still back there. Headlights unwavering. Then I saw blue lights in the distance. A state trooper on the side of the road, pulling someone over. I slowed down instinctively, and for a second, I thought about stopping, telling him everything. But as I passed the cop, I glanced in my mirror. The green truck was gone. Just like that. I pulled into the next gas station, heart pounding, eyes scanning every shadow. I waited. 10 minutes. 20. Nothing. Eventually, I convinced myself I'd imagined it. Maybe it was another trucker screwing around. Maybe it was all nerves and too much caffeine. I slept in the cab that night. Engine off, doors locked, curtain pulled shut. When I woke up, the sun was already up. The lot was half full normal. No green truck. I finished the run, dropped off the load, and didn't tell anyone. But a week later, I saw a post on one of the trucking forums I frequent. A guy described almost the exact same thing. A green Peterbilt tailing him for miles on an overnight haul near Ely. Same weird behavior. Same disappearance. The thread got a few replies. Some joked it was a ghost rig. Others said it might be a trucker with a grudge. One comment stuck with me. If it's the same one I saw, you're lucky he stayed in his truck. That comment had no follow-up. No details. The account that posted it disappeared a few days later. Since then, I've avoided night runs through that stretch. I've told myself it was a coincidence. A prank. But I still check my mirrors a little too often. Still get cold sweats when I see an old Peterbilt with green paint. Because here's the part one didn't tell anyone. When I got home and checked my dashcam footage, there was nothing. Just black highway and my own headlights. No truck behind me, not even when I could see it in the mirrors. But there was one frame, just one, where the feed glitched for a second. And in that single frame, frozen in digital blur, you can just barely make out a figure standing in the middle of the road, wearing a green jacket, staring straight at my truck. I didn't show that dashcam frame to anyone. I told myself it was a trick of the light, a reflection, a bad render from a cheap camera, but I didn't delete it either. I kept it saved on an old flash drive, tucked away in the glove box like a secret I didn't want but couldn't throw out. A few months passed. I stuck to daylight routes, shorter runs. I told dispatch I needed time off overnight hauls because of family stuff. They didn't ask questions. I think they knew better. Then I got a call from Denny, another long hauler I'd crossed paths with in Wyoming a few times. Tough guy, mid-50s, been doing the job longer than I'd been alive. His voice was shaky when he called. He said he'd been followed. Green Peterbilt. No plates. Same behavior, tailgating, falling back, never passing. He sounded spooked in a way I'd never heard from him before. I asked if he got a look at the driver. He went quiet. Then he said there wasn't one. I didn't know what to say. He hung up not long after. 2 days later, I heard Denny rolled his rig just outside of Wendover. Middle of the day. Dry conditions. No other vehicles involved. They said he must have fallen asleep at the wheel. But anyone who's driven long enough can read between the lines when something doesn't add up. The part that haunts me is what the paramedics found. His CB radio was still transmitting. The mic was crushed in his hand, like he'd died trying to say something. But no one caught it. No one was listening. After that, I started having this recurring dream. I'm driving through the desert. Black sky. Endless highway. Same route near Ely. My headlights barely cut through the dark. The road ahead just keeps stretching. Then I see it, a glint of chrome. Headlights behind me. I try to accelerate, but the truck doesn't respond. My foot's on the floor, but I'm coasting. Slowing down. The lights get closer. And closer. Then I see it pull alongside, slow, deliberate. The green paint glowing faintly under the moonlight. But there's no driver. Just the cab, empty. And in the passenger seat, there's a man. Not a person. Just a man-shaped figure. No face. Just staring at me. Then I wake up. Drenched in sweat, heart trying to punch through my chest. The thing is, I've had that dream at least a dozen times now. And every time, that figure in the passenger seat gets closer to the window. Closer to my window. Last week, I had it again. Only this time, I didn't wake up. Not right away. This time, I saw my own reflection in the glass. And behind it, not one, but two figures sitting in the green truck. Both looking at me. When I finally snapped out of it, I could still hear the engine rumble. But I was in my own bed. Alone. Or at least, I thought I was. I haven't driven since. I told dispatch I'm done. Sold the rig. Erased my GPS history. Threw out the dashcam. But sometimes, when I'm out at night, at a diner, or walking across a parking lot, I'll hear it. That slow, deep hum. And when I turn to look, there's nothing there. Just the sound of a diesel engine fading into the dark. Like it's still following me. Still waiting. It was the kind of night you only drive through because the paycheck depends on it. Heavy rain, no moon, just endless black highway outside Omaha. I'd been behind the wheel for 13 hours, and dispatch begged me to push just 2 more. Said the load needed to hit Denver by morning. Said it was a favor. I should have said no. By the time I passed mile marker 200, I was the only rig on the road. Nothing ahead, nothing behind. Just the soft thump of rain on the windshield, and the occasional hiss of the wipers dragging across glass. It started with the CB. I was on channel 19, hoping to hear someone else out there, even just chatter or static. But it was dead. Silent. Until I heard this faint voice. No greeting, no call sign, just a broken whisper. Mile 237. That's it. No trucker slang, no background noise. Just that low voice, barely audible, like it was squeezed through a rusted wire. I reached for the mic, thumbed it, asked who it was. No response. Then 5 minutes later again. Mile 237. This time slower. Heavier. I stared down at the dashboard GPS. I was at 215. Still over 20 miles out. I told myself it was some drunk on the airwaves. Maybe a prank. Maybe some kid with a handheld screwing around. But my hands were cold. I could feel sweat behind my knees, pooling under my thighs despite the ASC running low. At mile 225, I saw something. Red lights in the distance, blinking. I eased off the gas. Maybe a construction zone or a wreck. But as I got closer, I realized it was a semi. Hazards on, jackknife it off the shoulder, nose buried in the ditch. I pulled over. Emergency lights on. Grabbed my flashlight and stepped into the rain. The rig looked abandoned. Door half open, cab light on, but no one in the seat. I called out. Nothing. I walked around the front, mud sloshing under my boots, and pointed my light into the sleeper compartment. Empty. No blood. No broken glass. Just empty. The logbook was still open on the dash. Pages soaked and stuck together. I couldn't read the handwriting. I took a few steps back. Stared at the truck. That's when I noticed something carved into the side of the trailer. It was barely visible under the rain. 3 long slashes, deep and jagged, like someone had taken a crowbar to the aluminum siding. It wasn't graffiti. It was violent. Purposeful. I climbed back in my cab and pulled back onto the road. Kept driving. At mile 230, the CB crackled again. He waits, where it's dark. Then silence. I didn't respond this time. I didn't even touch the mic. My foot pressed harder on the pedal. I passed mile marker 236. Just a blur in the dark. Then I saw it. On the shoulder. Another rig. No hazards. No lights. Just parked there. Facing the wrong direction. Turned toward oncoming traffic. I slowed down to a crawl, hand hovering near the gear shift. As I rolled by, I looked into the cab. There was a driver. But he wasn't moving. Sitting upright, hands on the wheel, head tilted forward. Like he'd fallen asleep with his eyes open. But it wasn't sleep. His mouth was open. Eyes wide. Rain running down the windshield in rivers, and he didn't blink. Didn't flinch. I hit the gas. I don't know why I didn't call for help. I don't know what held my hand from reaching the mic. I just needed to get past 237. When the marker came, I looked away. Didn't want to see what might be there. But I couldn't help myself. I glanced back in the mirror. There was a man standing in the middle of the road. Not in front of the marker. Behind it, like he was waiting for someone to pass. Wearing a poncho or coat, face hidden under a hood. No flashlight. No reflectors. Just standing there in the pouring rain. My headlights never hit him. But I saw him. Clear as day. A few miles later, I saw taillights, 2 rigs up ahead, riding close together. I sped up, needing to catch them. Craving the comfort of someone else on the road. When I got close, I keyed my mic. Tried to call out. Asked if anyone else had seen the man at 237. No answer. But both trucks suddenly turned off at the next exit. One after the other. I followed them with my eyes. Watched their brake lights fade down the ramp. And then I was alone again. I pulled into a Love's truck stop just past the county line and parked under the floodlight. Engine running. Doors locked. Didn't sleep that night. Didn't finish the run. I told dispatch I had a mechanical issue. They sent someone else. I never asked if the load got there. I've heard stories since. Others saying the same thing. 237 near Omaha. Empty rigs. CB whispers. They say it's a bad stretch. That it has a history. But no one ever tells the full story. Because maybe the full story is worse than the silence. And maybe, just maybe, the mile markers are counting something other than distance. I broke one of the unspoken rules that night. Never park overnight in a private lot with no cameras and no traffic. Especially not one behind a locked fence. But I was exhausted. Been driving 16 hours, running on truck stop coffee and a stale sandwich from 2 states back. Dispatch said the receiver in Tulsa wouldn't take the delivery until morning, and the gate was already locked when I arrived. A guy from the warehouse, big guy with a red cap and a beard, came out, waved me in through the side lot, and said I could park behind the building until morning. "You'll be safe back there," he said. "No one comes back there." I should have known better. The moment I rolled through that chain-link gate and heard it clank shut behind me, something in my gut twisted. The lot was surrounded by a tall wooden fence on 3 sides and the warehouse on the 4th. No lights, no security cams. Just gravel, a stack of pallets, and a rusted metal dumpster. I backed my trailer into the corner, shut down the engine, and locked the cab. I figured I'd get a few hours of sleep and roll out first thing. It was around 1:15 a.m. when I woke up the first time. I didn't hear anything. That's what struck me. Not silence, but absence. No distant highway hum. No crickets. No wind. Like the air itself had stopped moving. I sat up in the sleeper, looked out through the windshield. Nothing. Then I saw movement near the fence. At first I thought it was a shadow from the tree line outside the lot. But it moved against the wind. A flicker. Then a figure. Someone was standing behind the dumpster. They weren't doing anything, just standing there. Still. Barely lit by the moon. I stared for maybe a full minute. Then they stepped backward and disappeared behind the dumpster completely. I told myself it was probably security, or maybe one of the warehouse guys cutting through the lot. But something about it didn't sit right. They didn't walk like someone who belonged there. They didn't walk like someone alive. I tried to brush it off, climbed back into the sleeper, told myself not to overthink it. I was tired, seeing things. 30 minutes later, I heard footsteps. On gravel. Slow. Deliberate. I held my breath and peeked out the curtain again. Someone was walking around my truck. Not running. Not sneaking. Just circling. I couldn't see their face. They wore dark clothes. Hood pulled up. Every time they stepped around a corner of the trailer, they disappeared for a few seconds, then reappeared. I grabbed my flashlight and yanked open the driver door, shining it down fast. Nothing. The lot was empty. The footsteps had stopped. I didn't sleep after that. I sat in the driver's seat, engine off, keys in hand, staring at the mirrors. Around 3:40 a.m., I saw headlights. Not on the road. Inside the lot. But the gate was still shut. I didn't hear the gate open. Didn't hear a latch. Just suddenly headlights, dim and yellow, creeping across the gravel. An old van. Blue or green, hard to tell. No company markings. It rolled to a stop near the pallets. Engine idling. No one got out. I sat frozen. My hand hovered over the ignition. Then the driver's door opened. A man stepped out. He was tall. Thin. Something about the way he moved was wrong. Like his joints didn't bend quite right. He walked straight to the back of my trailer. Stopped. I cracked the door slightly and shouted. Asked what the hell he was doing. He didn't answer. Just stood there. Then he walked back to the van. Climbed in. Shut the door. And turned off the lights. But he didn't leave. He sat there. Engine running. For hours. I stayed in the cab, watching him, both of us locked in some quiet standoff. Just before dawn, the warehouse gate finally opened. Another worker rolled in and parked. I took my chance, fired up the engine, and moved. The van still hadn't moved. I rolled up to the warehouse dock, stepped out, and told the morning shift guy everything. He didn't say much. Just looked at the van, then at the back lot fence. Then he said flatly, "That lot's been fenced off for years. No one's supposed to park back there." I told him the guy from the night shift let me in. Red cap, beard. Said his name was Darren. The morning guy's face changed. Darren died 3 years ago. I didn't say anything. I just climbed back in and waited for the loadout. After I delivered in Colorado, I called the warehouse again. Asked to speak to a supervisor. They told me they had no night shift workers assigned to that gate. No records of any van. And the kicker? They said the back lot isn't just fenced off. It was permanently closed after a fatal accident involving a driver. Guy got trapped between his rig and a dumpster. Crushed. They never figured out what he was doing back there alone. They tell you not to pick up hitchhikers. Every driver hears that within their first week on the road. Not just because it's against company policy. It's because once you open that door, you don't know what you're letting in. But I broke that rule once. It was around 2:30 in the morning. I was running south on I-75, somewhere near the Tennessee line. The storm had let up, but the road was still wet, steam rising from the blacktop. I was tired, running behind schedule, and wired on gas station coffee. I saw her at exit 53. At first I thought it was a trick of the headlights. Just a flash of white near the sign. But as I got closer, I saw her standing there, right near the ramp, thumb out, soaked to the bone. She couldn't have been more than 19. Long dark hair stuck to her cheeks, wearing a backpack and a white hoodie that was clinging to her like wet paper. She didn't look scared, just exhausted. Cold. I passed her. That was my instinct. But a half-mile down the road, my stomach twisted. I kept thinking about the look on her face. Not desperate. Just done. Like she'd already accepted no one would stop. So I slowed down. Took the next exit. Looped around. Came back. She was still there. I pulled over. Cracked the window. She didn't say much, just asked if I was going south. I nodded. She climbed in, dripping all over the passenger seat. The cab went quiet after that. She sat there, staring straight ahead. Didn't ask where I was headed. Didn't say thank you. Just held onto that backpack like her life depended on it. After about 10 minutes, I asked where she was going. She whispered something. I didn't catch it. I asked again. She looked at me and said louder. Anywhere but here. Something about the way she said it chilled me. Like she meant it. Like she really had to get away. I didn't push it. We rode in silence for almost an hour. Then she asked to stop at the next gas station. I figured she needed the restroom. Pulled into a Love's. She got out without a word and disappeared inside. I waited. 5 minutes. 10. 15. I went in to check. But she wasn't there. I asked the cashier if he saw a girl come in. Described her exactly. He looked at me like I was crazy. Said no one had come in for over an hour. I checked the bathroom. Knocked. Called out. Nothing. I walked around the back of the building. Even checked near the dumpsters. It was like she vanished. Back in the truck, her seat was dry. No water on the upholstery. The floor mat wasn't even damp. And the backpack she'd been clinging to? It was gone. I sat there trying to make sense of it. Checked the dash cam. Replayed the footage. And there she was, standing by the road, getting in. But once she was inside the truck, the passenger seat looked empty on the recording. I could hear my voice talking to her, asking questions. But no one was sitting there. No wet clothes. No figure. Nothing. Just me. I pulled out of the lot, driving numb. My skin felt cold all over, like I'd stepped into a freezer. By the time I reached Atlanta, I was already trying to convince myself I imagined the whole thing. Until the news broke. A body was found off I-75 near exit 53. Female. Young. No ID. Clothes soaked. Strangled. Estimated time of death? Between 1 o'clock and 2 a.m. An hour before I picked her up. I didn't say anything to anyone. Didn't report it. Who would believe me? A trucker claiming he gave a ride to a dead girl? But there's one thing I never told anyone. Not until now. 2 days later, I found a note in my cab. Folded neatly, tucked behind the sun visor. Just one line written in smeared ink. Thank you for stopping. I still have it. Some nights, when I'm back on that stretch of road, I check my mirrors without meaning to. Half expecting to see someone sitting beside me. Hair soaked. Face calm. Still trying to get away from exit 53. I've seen a lot of things on the road that don't make sense. Fires with no source. Broken down cars with no one inside. Shoes in the middle of the highway, just one, clean, not dusty or worn. But nothing stuck with me like that night in Montana. It was late March. Still cold enough to frost your windshield after sundown. I was hauling an empty trailer from Billings to Spokane after a drop. Light run. Roads were dead quiet. Barely passed another soul after 10 p.m. I remember how bright the moon was. You know those nights when the world looks black and silver instead of dark? Like every ditch and tree gets outlined in white? That's how it looked. I was somewhere west of a town called Alberton. You wouldn't even know it's there unless you blink and catch the exit sign. That's when I saw him. A man in the ditch. Not moving. Just lying there. It wasn't the body that scared me. It was the way he was positioned. Flat on his back, one arm sticking up toward the sky, like he'd frozen mid-reach. And his head was tilted at an unnatural angle. Chin pointed up, but twisted too far over the shoulder. I slowed down. My instincts told me to stop. Something about the shape of the body didn't feel right. I pulled over and threw my hazards on. Grabbed my flashlight, stepped out into the cold. Gravel crunched under my boots. The night was dead still. Not a single car in either direction. I walked toward the ditch. And he was gone. Not just moved gone. There were no tracks, no sign of someone crawling or limping away. The grass where he'd been laying was flattened, still depressed. But the body? Nowhere. I scanned the brush with my light. Called out. Nothing. Just as I turned to head back, I heard it. A branch snapping. Behind me. I spun around, beam shaking. Nothing there. Just open road and forest beyond. I didn't wait. I jogged back to the cab, climbed in, locked both doors, and got moving. 10 minutes later, I passed another ditch. Same shape. Same body. Flat on the back. One arm up. Head twisted too far. I slammed the brakes. I know what I saw the first time. This wasn't another person in trouble. It was the same man. Same clothes. Same position. Like he'd just been relocated. I didn't stop again. I kept driving, gripping the wheel hard enough my fingers went numb. 15 miles later, another ditch. Another body. Same position. Same face. That time, I didn't even look. I started speeding. 80. 90. Every turn of the road, I expected to see him again. And I did. At every ditch. Every 20, maybe 30 miles. Always just long enough for my headlights to catch him. Flat on his back. Arm up. Like he was reaching for me. I finally made it to a rest stop near St. Regis. Pulled in hard. Parked under a street lamp and shut the engine. I sat there, hands shaking. Then I looked at the dash cam. I didn't want to, but I had to. I played back the footage. There was no one in any of the ditches. Not once. But the camera did pick up something else. Every 30 miles, there was a brief flicker on the side of the frame. A blur. Humanoid shape. But it was always in the same spot, passenger side mirror. Only for a second. A few frames. A flash of something tall. Standing close. Too close. That night I stayed parked until the sun came up. Didn't sleep. Didn't move. Just sat in the cab with the dome light on and the door locked. The next morning, I told myself it was a hallucination. Stress. Fatigue. I even got my eyes checked a week later. Doctor said I was fine. Fit to drive. But 2 months later, I heard from another driver. Friend of a friend. He'd been coming up that same stretch. Said he saw a man in the ditch. Face turned too far, arm reaching up. When I asked if he stopped, he said something I'll never forget. I didn't need to. He was already there again 10 minutes later. He quit driving a week after that. I looked him up recently. Found his Facebook. He hasn't posted since 2021. I don't drive that route anymore. If dispatch tries to send me west of Billings, I fake a breakdown. Say the truck's acting up. But I still see him sometimes. Not in real life. On the footage. When I check my dash cam at night, I still catch him in the side mirror. A flicker. A shape. Always just behind the door. And sometimes, the door is unlocked. I didn't take another load for 3 days. Parked the rig behind a closed-down diner west of Joliet, watched old crime shows on mute, and slept with the bunk light on. I kept waiting for the handprint to reappear, for another box to vanish. But nothing happened, so I convinced myself it was just stress. Long hauls, too much caffeine, weird lighting. I cleaned the bunk, scrubbed every inch of the cab, tossed the broken tile piece in a dumpster behind a Circle K in Springfield. But I kept driving. You don't make money sitting still. The next job was out of Kansas City, headed toward Amarillo. Live load, grocery goods, 53-foot reefer unit. I picked it up from a frozen food warehouse just after midnight. The yard dog waved me in. Friendly guy. Said they'd had a recent issue with lot theft. Warned me not to leave the trailer unattended at rest areas. He said someone had been tampering with lift gates. I forced a chuckle. Said I'd heard about that before. He didn't laugh. Said, "No man. This just started last month. We had a guy say he saw someone standing under his rig. At 3 a.m. Just standing there, not moving. He chased him off. Few hours later, trailer's empty. Nothing on camera. Whole load gone." I nodded, pretending I didn't feel cold creeping down my spine. Then I drove. The weather was thick with summer haze, heat rolling off the asphalt like smoke. I kept the cab cool and the music low, eyes bouncing between mirrors and side windows like I was being followed. I made it south of Wichita before the tiredness hit like a brick. I wasn't going to risk pushing further. Pulled into a small truck lot tucked behind a rundown fuel stop with maybe 6 other rigs. The place was dim, no lights over the far side of the lot, just shadows between trailers. I backed in tight between 2 reefers, killed the engine, and climbed into the bunk. I woke up at 4:12 a.m. and I knew something was wrong. Not because of a sound, not because of a dream, because the air felt different. Stale. Heavy. Like someone had just exhaled next to me. The cab was dark. Dead quiet. Then I heard it. A sound I never want to hear again. A slow, deliberate click. Metal on metal. From the back. The lift gate. I slid out of the bunk and grabbed the flashlight I keep clipped to the side panel. Switched it on. And froze. There was dirt on the floor again. Right behind the driver's seat. Not tracked in. Not smeared. Placed. Like someone had scooped a handful of black earth and set it down, clean and neat, on the rubber mat. I stepped outside. The lot was still. All the rigs silent. The fuel stop closed. And behind my trailer, under the lip of the lift gate, I saw a shadow shift. Not move. Not walk. Shift. Like it was pressed flat against the wall. Watching. I called out. No answer. But then the trailer lights flickered. Not off. Not dim. Just stuttering. Like a dying bulb. I backed away. I didn't want to walk back there. I didn't want to see what was under the trailer. But I had to. I circled wide, keeping distance. Shined the light around. And found nothing. Just empty gravel. No footprints. No crates. No marks. Except one. Scratched into the dirt under the back wheels. A line. Then a short curve. Another line. It took me a moment to realize what it was. A drawn symbol. Not religious. Not arcane. Just a simple stick figure. Standing beside a trailer. I left that lot before the sun rose. Didn't care if I ran my clock short. Didn't even stop for fuel until I hit Oklahoma. I tried not to look in the mirrors too much after that. Tried not to check the rear camera feed unless I had to. But in Amarillo, during unloading, I asked the dock guy to tell me if anything looked wrong. He opened the trailer, then asked if I'd already started unloading. For boxes missing. No broken seal. No loose pallets. And in the empty slot where the boxes should have been, a piece of tile. Same kind. Same chipped edge. I carry it with me now. Not because I want to, but because when I tried to throw the first one away, the dirt came back. Every time. Glove box. Bunk. Even found some packed inside my boots once. And always faintly the smell of soil. Like old earth. Like something buried. I don't think it's a ghost. I don't even think it's supernatural. I think someone's using these lots. Hiding between loads. Moving things in and out while we sleep. People like me, tired, overworked, living out of 18 wheels and foam mattresses. We're the perfect targets. No one checks the cameras. No one believes the stories. But I know what I saw. And I know what's following me. The desert does something to your head. Maybe it's the way the heat peels off the road, like you're staring through water. Or the silence. Not peaceful silence, but the kind that makes you realize how far away you are from anything that could help you if things went wrong. I was hauling steel beams out of Utah, heading southwest into Nevada. A long, open stretch, too few stops, too many miles. My dispatcher warned me the route was under-patrolled and full of breakdowns. No cell towers for hours. Didn't matter. The load paid well. I'd just passed the old mining town of Pioche, rolling through that endless stretch of baked red rock and scrub. You know the type. Dust devils dancing across dry plains. Burnout trailers in the distance. One gas station every 100 miles, if that. About an hour after sunset, the air got weird. I'd been listening to a true crime podcast to keep my head sharp, but somewhere between mile marker 226 and 241, the signal cut out. No music, no voices, just static. I turned it off and cracked the window. The desert wind had cooled but carried this strange scent, like burnt oil and dried blood. I told myself it was the trailer grease and maybe a roadkill deer a few miles back. But I rolled up the window just the same. That's when I noticed the lights. Not ahead, not behind, to the side, way out in the scrub, about 200 yards off the right shoulder. At first, I thought it was a rancher's truck, just headlights across the flats. But it was moving too smooth, too parallel with me. Same speed. No bumps. No dust. It was pacing me. I tapped the brakes to lose a few miles per hour. The lights matched. I sped up. So did they. I switched my high beams off. Then on again, trying to signal. Nothing. I hit a wide bend in the road and got a better angle. It wasn't a truck. There was no outline. No structure. Just the lights. Floating. Like two white eyes. I drove another 5 miles before I finally lost sight of them behind a rock ridge. I kept telling myself it was heat haze, or maybe a reflection. But my mouth was dry. My hands tight on the wheel. I hadn't passed another vehicle in over 40 minutes. And I was running low on fuel. I finally pulled off at an unmanned pump station. One of those ones where the credit card machine barely works, the canopy lights flicker, and the bathroom's always locked. No one else was there. As I filled up, I noticed a pickup parked across the lot. Old. Rusted out. Covered in dust. No one in the driver's seat. I finished fueling and walked around the back of my trailer. There were footprints in the dirt. One set. Deep heel marks. Long stride. They led from the desert toward my rig and stopped right by the driver's side. No return tracks. Like someone came up to my door and just vanished. I didn't even check the bathroom. I climbed back in, locked up, and got moving. 10 miles later, I passed a sign that said, "Next service is 94 miles." I white-knuckled the wheel the whole way. The road twisted through badlands. The sky so dark I could see every star, but no moon. That's when I noticed the sound. Something tapping. Not from the engine. Not from outside. From inside the cab. Tap. 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 I turned off the fan. Held my breath. Tap. It was coming from the passenger footwell. Slow. Irregular. Like a nail. Or a tooth. Falling. I reached over and yanked the glove box open. Nothing. But there was dirt on the mat. Red, fine dust. Not tracked in by me. I drive in Crocs. I would have remembered if I stepped in desert mud. And then I saw something lodged between the floor mat and the plastic paneling. A small piece of what looked like a license plate. Not whole. Just the corner. Bent. Scratched. The letters barely readable. NVA1. I slammed the brakes. My trailer rocked. I threw the hazard lights on and stepped out with my flashlight. I opened the passenger side. Checked underneath. Inside. All around the undercarriage. No one. But when I looked down the road ahead, far out in the distance, way beyond my lights, I saw something in the middle of the blacktop. At first it looked like an animal. Maybe a coyote. But it was standing up. Still. Just waiting. I climbed back into the cab and kept driving. Didn't slow down. Didn't blink. As I approached, it stepped off the road and disappeared into the scrub. No lights. No sound. Just the dry air behind me. I reached the next way station at dawn. Told the guy in the booth I was being followed. He just looked at me like I was out of my mind. Said they've had a few drivers come through saying the same thing. Always at night. Always through this stretch of desert. He shrugged and handed me a stale coffee. Said there's been disappearances on that route going back decades. Truckers who never made it to their destination. Loads abandoned. Engines still warm. No driver. No sign of struggle. No footprints. Just dust. And maybe, if you're unlucky, the corner of a plate wedged under your seat. I've been crossing the border between the US and Canada for over 10 years. It's routine, line up, paperwork, maybe a quick inspection, then back on the road. But there's one crossing I avoid when I can help it. The one at Sweetgrass, Montana. It's quiet there. Too quiet. One early October night, I had no choice. I was hauling frozen seafood from Seattle to Winnipeg, pushing to make up lost time after a flat tire in Spokane. I pulled into the Sweetgrass border station around 11:30 p.m. The station was deserted except for a single officer standing inside the glass booth, half lit by fluorescent lights. No line. No other trucks. Just me. I rolled forward slowly and stopped at the inspection window. The officer looked up, face pale and tired. No smile. No eye contact. I slid over my documents and waited. He scanned my paperwork without a word. Then, without asking any questions, he motioned me to pull into the inspection bay. I thought maybe they wanted to check the refrigeration unit. I drove forward and parked under the harsh white lights. The booth door opened. No one stepped out. I sat there, idling, listening to the hum of the refrigeration unit and the occasional creak of the trailer settling. Minutes passed. No footsteps. No voices. Then I noticed something on the booth window. A faint handprint. Smudged. Dirty. From the inside. I knocked on the glass. Still nothing. I called out. Silence. I pulled my phone out to call dispatch, but the signal was gone. No bars. I tried the CB radio. Dead static. Panic started to rise. I tried to open the driver door, but the lock was frozen tight. I reached for the emergency exit door in the sleeper, but it was jammed. The temperature inside the cab started dropping fast. I looked out the windows. The border station was empty. No lights in the offices, no other vehicles in the lot. Except for one thing. Across the station's yard, something was moving. A figure, pacing slowly near the chain-link fence that separated the US and Canada. I couldn't make out details, but the way it moved was off. Jerky. Stilted. Like a puppet with tangled strings. The figure stopped and turned its head directly toward me. I swear it held my gaze for a long, unbearable moment. Then it disappeared behind a cluster of shipping containers. I felt frozen. Minutes felt like hours. Then the officer's booth light flickered on. For a second, I saw the silhouette of a man sitting at the desk. He raised his hand, fingers twitching nervously. The light went out again. Suddenly, the door to the booth slammed open, banging against the side of the building. I jumped. No one was there. I tried to start the engine, but it wouldn't turn over. I reached for my phone again. Still no signal. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw something on the rearview mirror. A slip of paper folded tight. No idea when it got there. I unfolded it with shaking hands. Written in block letters, barely legible. Don't cross tonight. I stared at the paper, looked around the empty lot, and suddenly, I heard the sound of tires crunching on gravel. Far away at first, then closer. A semi-truck pulling up beside me, the engine idling. No lights on, no driver visible. I locked the doors and sat back in my seat. The truck stayed there, silent and dark, for what felt like forever. Then, just as suddenly as it arrived, it rolled away back toward the highway. I waited for dawn. When the sun finally rose, I found my phone's signal back. Called my dispatcher. Reported everything. They said the Sweetgrass crossing had been shut down that night due to technical issues. No official explanation for the power outage or the empty inspection bay. No one else reported any other trucks stuck there. And when I asked about the mysterious truck, the dispatcher just said no other rigs were logged in or out of the border for hours. I never crossed there again after that night. But sometimes, when I'm parked at rest stops near the border, I swear I catch a glimpse of that shadowy figure pacing just beyond the fence. Still waiting. Still watching. Waiting for the next trucker who thinks crossing the border is just another routine drive. Winter up north isn't like anywhere else. The cold gets into your bones, and the snow can swallow the whole world until you're trapped in white silence. I was hauling a load of medical supplies from Minneapolis to Thunder Bay, Canada. The route took me through some of the most isolated stretches of highway you'll find in the continental U.S. I left the terminal late in the afternoon, pushing to make a delivery before the weekend. The forecast warned of heavy snow starting after midnight, but I figured I had plenty of time. By the time I hit the outskirts of International Falls, the sky was already heavy with clouds. The sun dipped below the horizon early, leaving a dull twilight. I pulled off at a small rest stop near the highway's edge, hoping to grab a quick bite and stretch my legs before the weather got worse. The place was deserted except for a faded "Welcome to Minnesota" sign half buried in snow, and a lone pickup truck parked near the entrance. I noticed the driver wasn't inside. The door was slightly ajar, and fresh footprints led from the cab toward the woods behind the lot. I figured the guy might be hunting or just taking a walk, so I didn't think much of it. I ate my sandwich, filled the tank, and hit the road again. The highway ahead was slick, and the snow started falling in heavy flakes. Visibility dropped fast. I turned on the CB and tried to reach other drivers, but the channel was dead. No chatter, no static, just silence. I pressed on, knowing I had to keep moving. About 40 miles past the rest stop, the radio crackled for the first time that night. "Big rig, 12 o'clock, 50 yards. I looked up, scanning the road. Nothing. The snow swallowed everything. I kept driving, alert, the truck's tires crunching on packed snow. Minutes later, the radio crackled again. "Still there. Right beside you." My heart pounded. I checked the mirrors, but the road was empty. Then I saw headlights. On the shoulder. Far enough back to be someone's rig, but too close. I slowed down, tried to flash my brights. The headlights didn't move. They stayed fixed, watching. I pulled off the highway onto a turnout. No one behind me. No other trucks. Only the swirling snow. I shut down the engine and sat in the cab, trying to steady my breathing. I stared out into the storm, watching the snow blur the edges of the trees lining the road. Then I heard it. A tapping. Soft. From the roof of the trailer. I grabbed my flashlight and climbed out. The snow crunched beneath my boots. I circled the trailer, shining the beam upward. Nothing. No animals. No loose branches. Just snow settling on the metal roof. I shook my head and went back inside. Minutes later, the radio crackled again. "Help me." The voice was weak, desperate. I grabbed the mic, but no words came out. I tried again. No response. I scanned the dark forest around me, wishing someone would answer. Then my phone buzzed. 1 bar. A text message. No number. Just 3 words. "Turn around. Now." I looked out the windshield. Nothing but snow and darkness. I started the engine and drove off. As I passed the turnout, the headlights flickered on behind me. The truck was there. Silent. Following. Closer. Faster. The road narrowed. My tires slipped. I fought for control, heart racing. Then the headlights vanished. The radio went dead again. For the rest of the trip, I kept glancing in the mirrors. Waiting. Wondering if the truck was still there, just beyond sight. When I finally reached Thunder Bay, the weather cleared. I checked the CB once more. Static. No trucks. No voices. And in the cold, empty parking lot, the only sound was the crunch of my boots on snow. The call came in on a frigid November morning. The dispatcher said there was a missing person report filed for Jake, the truck helper who vanished months ago near Duluth. I'm part of a small search and rescue unit based out of a ranger station just outside town. We get a lot of calls, but this one stuck with me from the start. Jake wasn't just lost in the woods. He was lost somewhere between the roads, the trucks, and the places people forget to look. We organized a team, 3 of us plus a K9, and headed out near the last known location of Jake's backpack, where the troopers said they found it buried under a thin layer of snow. The area was thick forest, tangled pines and birches, shadows swallowing the undergrowth. The ground was slick with ice and frozen leaves. We combed through the trees, calling his name. No answer. The K9 tracked a faint scent, but lost it after a few hundred yards near an old logging road. We set up camp for the night, but I couldn't shake the feeling we weren't alone. The silence wasn't natural. There was a low hum, almost mechanical, coming from deeper in the woods. Something moving under the frozen canopy. The next morning we found it. Not Jake, but a set of tire tracks, narrow and deep, winding through the snow like a serpent. They weren't from a pickup or a logging truck. They were from something smaller. A trailer dolly, maybe. The tracks led us to a clearing, where the snow had been disturbed recently. And in the center, a fresh patch of overturned earth. We dug carefully. No body. Just a rusted metal box, buried beneath the soil. Inside the box was a tattered driver's log, soaked and frozen, pages barely readable. Jake's name was written on the front. There were notes. Distress scribbles. Something about someone watching, no escape, and they move with the trucks. We found other things too. Scrap metal pieces. A cracked license plate corner, faded letters, half buried in dirt. The same kind Jake found in the trailer. Something was out there. Something using the roads and the trucks like a ghost in the machine. We never found Jake. But after that search, several other drivers started reporting strange things. Boxes disappearing. Footsteps in the snow outside the cab. Shadowy figures glimpsed at the edges of headlights. One driver quit his job after finding the cracked license plate corner taped under his sleeper bunk. I don't know what's out there, but I know it's patient, and it's still moving, waiting for the next rig to roll into the quiet woods. Nevada's desert isn't just sand and heat. It's a vast, empty silence that swallows everything. The kind of place where time feels distorted and the horizon never quite settles. I was hauling industrial parts from Las Vegas to Reno, a routine route, but one that cuts through some of the most desolate stretches you can imagine. I left Vegas around 9 p.m., the city lights fading behind me as the asphalt stretched endless into the night. The radio was dead. No stations in the desert, just static crackling. I kept the headlights on high beam, trying to spot any movement. About 2 hours in, somewhere near a place called Tonopah, the truck started acting weird. The dashboard flickered. The gauges dipped. The engine shuddered. I pulled off onto a gravel turnout, hoping it was just a glitch. I killed the engine and stepped outside. The desert air was cold and sharp, stars blanketing the sky like a million pinpricks. I looked under the truck, checked the tires. All normal. But then I heard it, a sound like whispering. Soft, almost a hiss carried on the wind. I spun around, flashlight cutting through the darkness. Nothing but sand and scrub brush. I climbed back in, started the engine. The radio crackled again. Static, then words. Go back. Clear as day. I slammed the radio off. Tried the CB. Dead. I looked out the window and caught something moving near the roadside. A figure. Tall. Thin. Dressed in dusty, ragged clothes. No face visible. It stood still, staring. I floored the accelerator and tore back onto the highway. Behind me, I saw headlights flicker on the gravel turnout. But no truck. Just the figure. Watching. For the rest of the trip, I kept the doors locked, eyes darting between the side mirrors. Sometimes, in the reflection, I thought I saw that shape lurking just beyond the light's reach. I never saw it close, but I felt it. Like a weight pressing down on the cab. A warning. Nevada's desert has many secrets. Some are best left alone. There's a stretch of highway along the Atlantic coast, near the Outer Banks of North Carolina, where the ocean feels like it's breathing right next to you. The salt air stings your skin, and the wind carries secrets that no one wants to hear. I was hauling seafood from a processing plant in Morehead City to a distributor near Virginia Beach. The job was straightforward, cold cargo, predictable route, and an expected overnight stop. It was late October, the days already short and cold, with that damp chill that seeps into your bones. The sun was sinking fast when I pulled off at a small rest area right on the beach. The lot was mostly empty, just a few fishermen's trucks, a weathered van with peeling paint, and the steady rhythm of the waves breaking on the shore. I figured I'd take a quick break before pushing on for the final leg. Locked the rig, stretched my legs, and walked down a narrow sandy path toward the water. The beach was deserted except for a single figure standing far down near the tide line. At first, I thought it was just someone fishing, or maybe a local enjoying the last light. But as I got closer, the way the figure stood stopped me cold. They didn't move, didn't react to my footsteps or voice, just stared out at the sea, shoulders hunched against the wind, head bowed slightly as if listening. I called out, but there was no answer. The salty wind swallowed my words before they could reach the figure. Their skin looked pale, almost translucent in the fading light, like the kind of cold that can freeze you from the inside out. The longer I looked, the more uneasy I felt, a chill that had nothing to do with the ocean breeze. I told myself to shake it off and turned back toward the truck. That's when I noticed the footprints in the sand, dozens of them, leading both toward the water and back up to the parking lot. But all stopped at the figure. No footprints beyond, just bare sand and the slow, steady tide washing in. The sky had turned an angry shade of purple and gray. The wind picked up, whipping the sand across the beach and into my eyes. I climbed back into the cab, locked the doors, and started the engine. The waves sounded louder now, like a pounding heartbeat racing in time with my own. I tried to get back on the highway, but my radio suddenly crackled with static, then a faint voice, almost a whisper. "Don't stop." I spun the dial, but the voice was gone. The engine revved unevenly, the gauges flickered. The temperature dropped inside the cab like the air had turned to ice. That night, I didn't sleep. I kept looking out the windows, half expecting to see that pale figure lurking just beyond the beam of my headlights. Around 3 a.m., I caught it, reflected in the rearview mirror. A shadow standing behind the trailer, just at the edge of the light. I slammed on the brakes, heart pounding. I jumped out, flashlight in hand. The beach was empty. The sand was cold and still under my boots, the tide retreating like it had never been disturbed. No footprints. No sign of anything or anyone. Only the endless ocean, dark and unknowable. Morning came slowly, heavy with mist. I packed up and started driving, but the feeling didn't leave me. When I stopped for gas in a small town later that day, I went inside to grab a coffee. The cashier noticed my shaken hands and asked if I was all right. I said I was just tired. She smiled, but her eyes held a knowing sadness. She said some folks in the area avoid the beach at night. Said there's a watcher who waits for drivers who stray too close. Old tales, she said, but people see things out there, things that don't belong. I left without asking more. Days later, at a rest stop, I found something on the sand by my truck. A weathered, salt-stained notebook. Inside, scrawled handwriting detailed a truck driver's route with ominous notes. "Do not stop at the beach. The watcher waits." I packed up and left as fast as I could. I never told anyone about the figure or the notebook, but sometimes, when I'm on a coastal route late at night, I swear I hear footsteps on the sand behind me. No matter how fast I drive, the sound never fades. And sometimes, just sometimes, I catch a glimpse of that pale watcher standing silently at the tide line, waiting for the next trucker who thinks the ocean is just part of the scenery. There's a stretch of highway along the Pacific coast, the winding roads between Eureka and Crescent City, California, where the forest presses right up against the ocean, and the fog never seems to lift. I was hauling lumber from a mill outside Eureka to a construction yard near Crescent City, a routine run I'd made dozens of times. But that night, something felt off from the moment I left the yard. The fog was thick, swallowing the headlights and muting every sound. The radio buzzed with static, and every mile the forest seemed to close in tighter. I kept my speed slow, eyes sharp, but the silence was oppressive. No other vehicles. No wildlife calls. Just the drone of the engine and the soft hiss of tires on wet asphalt. About an hour into the drive, I saw the first flicker of movement at the roadside, a dark figure standing between the trees, barely visible in the fog. I slowed down watching it. The figure didn't move, didn't wave or signal, just stood there like a statue. I flashed my lights, hoping to get a reaction. Nothing. The figure vanished into the mist when I passed. I shook my head, telling myself it was a trick of the fog or a hiker off the trail. But then the radio crackled again. A voice, low and garbled, barely a whisper. "Turn back." I fiddled with the dial, but the signal cut out. I kept driving, feeling eyes on me from the shadows. About 20 miles down the road, I spotted a rundown turnout, barely visible in the fog. I pulled in to rest for a bit, thinking a break might clear my head. As I stepped out, the fog seemed to thicken, wrapping around me like a living thing. The forest was silent, the only sound the distant crash of waves. Then I heard footsteps crunching on the gravel behind me. I spun around, no one. I called out, "Silence." I checked my rig, no signs of tampering. But then I noticed footprints. Not mine. Small, barefoot prints leading toward the edge of the forest. I shined my flashlight into the trees. Nothing. Suddenly, the wind picked up, carrying a faint sound, a child's laughter. Cold and hollow. I ran back into the cab, locked the doors. The fog pressed against the windows, and I swear I saw faint faces staring back at me from the mist. I didn't sleep that night. At dawn, I called dispatch, told them what happened. They said no other drivers reported anything unusual. But weeks later, I heard about a missing child in the area, vanished near the very stretch of highway I'd stopped on. They never found her. Sometimes, when the fog rolls in thick, I hear that laughter again. And I wonder if the watcher in the mist is still out there, waiting for the next traveler to lose their way.